Welcome back to our channel. It is a truly wild day to be a fan of the boldest and most beautiful drama on television, because the fallout from this fashion war is literally getting physical, and I cannot even begin to process the absolute insanity of what just went down. Let's dive right into this absolute mess. You just look at Zende walking down that sleek, unfamiliar hallway at Logan Designs, and you can practically see the heat radiating off his skin because his face is flushed, this deep, angry red that tells you everything you need to know about the absolute storm brewing inside his head. He is carrying those sketches in his hands, and his knuckles are completely white from gripping the portfolio so tightly, because these aren't just pieces of paper to him. They are his blood and his sweat and his tears. These are the designs that were supposed to save Hope for the future and put him back on the map after being sidelined for so long by RJ and Thomas and everyone else who always seems to get a free pass at Forrester Creations, while Zende has to fight and claw for every single scrap of recognition he ever gets. He is vibrating with this intense kinetic energy that feels so dangerous and raw. And you can tell he isn't thinking about the consequences or the optics or the fact that he is marching straight into enemy territory. He just wants answers, and he wants to inflict the same kind of agonizing pain that is currently tearing his own chest apart. And then he just bursts into her new office without even bothering to knock, because why should he show her any professional courtesy when she showed him absolutely none when she packed up her life and defected to the competition? The door slams against the wall with this echoing thud that makes Hope jump in her chair, and she looks up from her pristine new desk with this expression of pure shock that quickly melts into guilt, because she knows exactly why he is there. Zende doesn't even give her a chance to speak before he hurls that portfolio right at her desk, and the folder bursts open. The scrap sketches go flying everywhere like dead leaves caught in a hurricane, and they scatter across her keyboard and flutter to the floor in this tragic visual representation of a career that has just been completely obliterated. It is such a messy and chaotic moment, and it feels so incredibly human, because you can see the exact second Zende's heart breaks all over again just looking at his discarded work. He starts screaming at her, and his voice is cracking with this raw, unfiltered agony that makes you want to look away, but you absolutely cannot. He tells her that she destroyed his career, and he doesn't just mean she set him back a few months. He means she literally took a sledgehammer to his entire future in the fashion industry. He poured his soul into that collection because he believed in her and he believed in their partnership, and he thought they were a team fighting against the corporate machine of Steffi and Ridge. But instead of standing by him, she just abandoned ship and left him holding the bag while she went off to play dress up at Katie's new company. You have to wonder how Zende even managed to hold it together this long, because the sheer humiliation of having your entire collection shelved so Hope could go start a rival line with her brother Deke Sharp, of all people, is just too much for one person to bear. Deke has zero experience, and Zende has dedicated his entire life to this craft, and Hope just tossed him aside like last season's accessories. Hope is sitting there surrounded by his ruined sketches, and she is stammering and trying to find the words to de-escalate the situation, because she can see that Zende is completely unhinged right now. She tries to explain herself, and she starts talking about self-respect and how she had to leave Forrester because she was suffocating under Steffi's thumb. She tells him that her line was paused and her funding was cut, and she was being treated like a second-class citizen in the company her own family helped build, and she just couldn't take the disrespect anymore. She needed to breathe, and she needed to create without constantly looking over her shoulder, waiting for the next axe to fall. It makes sense in her head because she is operating from a place of survival, and she truly believes she had no other choice if she wanted to save her own sanity and her own brand. But Zende is not hearing a single word of it, because all her excuses just sound like selfish, entitled whining to a man who has actually had to work for everything he has. He looks at her, and he doesn't see a victim of Steffi's corporate bullying. He just sees a selfish opportunist who threw away her loyalty to the Forrester family. The second thing's got a little bit difficult. The buzzing in his ears is getting louder and louder, and you can see this dark red mist descending over his eyes as he listens to her justify her betrayal. He steps closer to the desk, and the physical proximity between them becomes incredibly suffocating and tense. The air in the room feels thick and heavy, and it is almost hard to breathe just watching them because, something terrible is about to happen. Words are failing him, and the sheer magnitude of his hatred is bubbling up into his throat, and he feels like he is going to explode if he doesn't do something to make her understand the depth of his suffering. A slap, a literal slap in the face. The sudden violent motion comes out of nowhere, and the crack of skin on skin is so loud it sounds like a gunshot echoing through that sleek, modern Logan Designs office. Zende loses all control, and he brings his hand across her face with such terrifying force that Hope's head violently snaps to the side and her hair flies across her eyes. It happens so fast, but it feels like time completely stops in that exact fraction of a second. The kinetic energy of the blow sends a shockwave through the room, and then there is just this immediate deafening silence that is so heavy it feels like it could crush them both. Hope slowly brings her trembling hand up to her stinging cheek, and her eyes are wide with this sheer, unadulterated terror and disbelief. The redness is already blooming on her skin in the exact shape of his handprint, and she is just staring at him like she is looking at a complete stranger, because the Zende she knew would never in a million years resort to physical violence. But the Zende she knew is dead and gone, and the man standing in front of her is a monster created by her own ambition and her own careless disregard for the people she left behind. The physical shock radiating through her body is nothing compared to the emotional devastation of realizing that this bridge isn't just burned, it has been blown to absolute pieces, and the ashes have been salted. Zende doesn't even look remorseful, and that is the most terrifying part of this entire ordeal. He stands there breathing heavily with his chest heaving up and down, and he points a shaking finger at her and berates her with the most venomous words he can possibly summon. He calls her a selfish traitor, and the words hit her almost as hard as his hand did. He tells her she threw away Forrester loyalty for her own personal ambition and that she doesn't care about anyone but herself. He spits the words at her like they are poison, and you can see the absolute disgust in his eyes. He looks at her like she is something foul that he just scraped off the bottom of his shoe, and the contempt is so pure and so concentrated that it makes your stomach churn. What does loyalty even mean in this fashion war anymore? Because Zende genuinely believed they were fighting the same battle, but Hope just used him as a stepping stone and then kicked him into the dirt when a better offer came along. The legacy of his grandfather, Eric Forrester, means everything to Zende, and he feels like Hope just spat on that legacy and laughed in his face while she did it. He is screaming about loyalty and family and betrayal, and the words are just washing over Hope as she continues to hold her burning cheek. The tears are welling up in her eyes and spilling over her eyelashes and tracking down her face, but she doesn't even try to wipe them away because she is completely paralyzed by the horror of what her choices have wrought. She looks at the scattered sketches on her desk and the floor, and she realizes that their close working relationship is permanently over. All those late nights in the design room, drinking terrible coffee and brainstorming ideas and laughing about the future are just gone forever. They are never going to collaborate again, and they are never going to share that creative spark again, because you cannot unslap someone and you cannot unsay the things that Zende just said. The profound connection they shared as artists and friends has been violently severed, and there is absolutely no going back from this moment. The tragedy of two brilliant creatives being completely destroyed by this toxic corporate warfare is just so heartbreaking to witness. This perceived betrayal has mutated Zende's soul and turned him into a completely different person. He is no longer the ambitious, eager designer who just wanted to make his grandfather proud. He is a man consumed by hatred and vengeance, and he is walking down a very dark path that is going to have severe consequences for everyone around him. When you let that kind of darkness into your heart, it changes the fundamental chemistry of who you are. And Zende is crossing lines he never would have dreamed of crossing before today. The violence of his reaction speaks to a much deeper psychological break. And you have to wonder if he is ever going to be able to find his way back to the light, or if he is just going to let this bitterness swallow him whole. Hope is sitting there in her fancy new office, but she has never looked more isolated and alone in her entire life. She may have Logan Designs and she may have Katie and Bill bankrolling her dreams, but she has lost a piece of her history that she can never get back. The realization that her ambition has a very real, very painful body count is finally crashing down on her, and the weight of that guilt is suffocating. She thought she was just making a business decision, but she didn't factor in the human collateral damage. And now she is paying the price in the most brutal way imaginable. The physical mark on her face will fade in a few days, but the emotional scar of this confrontation is going to last a lifetime. And what does this mean for the broader fashion war between the Logans and the Forresters? Because this physical altercation symbolizes the total breakdown of civility between these two families. There are no rules anymore, and there are no boundaries. If Zende can walk into Logan Designs and physically assault Hope, then what is stopping Brooke from doing something even worse to Katie or Ridge, from completely destroying Bill? The escalation of this conflict is spiraling out of control. And this slap is just the opening salvo in a war that is going to leave Los Angeles in absolute ruins. The messy human reality of these characters is on full display, and it is a terrifying reminder that ambition and loyalty are a volatile combination that can destroy everything in their path. Zende finally turns his back on her, and he doesn't even bother to pick up his sketches because they are dead to him now, just like she is. He marches out of the office and the door slams shut behind him, leaving Hope sitting alone in the deafening silence with her stinging cheek and her shattered heart. The empty space he leaves behind feels so cold, and the scattered papers on her desk are just a monument to their ruined partnership. You just have to sit back and marvel at the absolute wreckage they have made of their lives, because this is the kind of drama that changes everything forever. And I, for one, cannot wait to see how the rest of this explosive storyline plays out.